It is 7:30. You're welcome along to OTB AM. We're with you all the way through until 10 o'clock, as ever, Monday to Friday. We'll have reaction to another mental weekend of sport over the course of the next couple of hours. We've got the Six Nations, the FA Cup, the Premier League, the National Leagues, the Formula One. A lot of exciting stuff happening across all of those, and whatever caught your eye, we'd love to hear about this morning. You can tweet us at Off The Ball or comment on the YouTube stream if that's where you're getting us. Tommy Rooney is beaming in live from lovely Clare this morning. How are you getting on, Tommy?
Owen, good morning. How are you?
Yeah, very well, very well. A busy weekend. You were at the big one yesterday.
Oh, yes. I spent my afternoon at Meath and Clare and Ennis.
What's Cusack Park like on a beautiful Sunday afternoon in the National League? It's like one of the most underrated grounds, I dare say.
Yeah, well, I hadn't realised that James O'Donoghue had picked it as his favourite ground to play with. Now, speaking to a couple of Clare people, when an opposition player picks your ground as their favourite ground, it's never a great sign.
No.
Yeah, it's not. Surprisingly, I was the only one in the stadium yesterday wearing a half and half jersey. Half Meath strip on one side, half Clare on the other. A lot of people... Now, I don't know what you're like when you're at a National League game. I can imagine the excitement in Mayo or Armagh and Kerry yesterday had kept your attention throughout. But I'd be one for checking scores in the other games as the game was going on. Now, a lot of people yesterday in Cusack Park were listening to the hurling. Clare and Galway were on at the same time. And it just kind of struck me that I know it must be difficult to schedule it, but for, Clare football to capture the attention, it's next to impossible when the hurlers are in action to Galway at the same time. Now, while the result of yesterday's game, the way results have fallen in Division 2, I don't think it's that big a deal for either or. It went down to the wire. Wasn't the greatest game of football, if I'm to be honest with you. They both kind of cancelled each other out a little bit. It ended up being 10-9 in the end. A lot of drama at the end, but you could hear the radios playing in the background throughout yesterday in Cusack Park, listening to the hurling.
Meath won is the big story here. They got the job done. They're safe. They're going to be staying up. That's the trajectory here. I would offer that if there are people in the football stadium checking the hurling scores, then it's a good sign for football. They could have just gone to the hurling game instead.
No, 100%. Well, like in Clare, the people of West Clare are massively into football, so a huge cohort of the support there would have been from one side of the county. But yeah, I think that's a pretty natural thing. Like I can't help myself. I'm always checking the score bureau after in the game, trying to get a read on who's playing. What was the excitement like after you had travelled up? I know you had travelled from Dublin as part of the Kerry Mafia, but had a lot of Kerry people travelled up from Tralee and Killarney and Dingle and other parts of the county up to the athletic grounds? Like, was there a big Kerry support?
There was, yeah. There was a good crowd around. I think someone said it was 11,000 people at the athletic grounds yesterday. I've never been to the athletic grounds. It's a great location, not too dissimilar to Cusack Park insofar as that you've got that kind of covered terrace which just creates this wall of sound on one side of the park. And I think that if there's one thing that gets people more excited than a little bit of needle in the game, then I haven't found it, especially in the National League when maybe the stakes aren't that high. I think that sometimes the stakes in the National League are at its highest when you've got two relegation-threatened teams, especially in Division 1, going head-to-head, whereas maybe the actual incentive to win yesterday wasn't as great as it might have been in some of the other games, for example. But what really turns the temperature up is when there is that little bit of needle, when you have, I don't know, some fella on the back of another fella, or a cynical pull down, or I said it to the people around me at the time. I was like, there was a chance here of a brawl in a tunnel at halftime. It was just ratcheting up nicely right before halftime, and sure enough, just as they were going into the tunnel at halftime, there was a bit of pushing and shoving, and I think Mike Quirk said to his players, listen, you hang here, you go into the tunnel first, Armagh, and let's just forget this nonsense and get this over and done with. And it didn't escalate into anything more, but that sort of setting down a marker, not being pushed around, that nature to the Gaelic games definitely does not exist when it comes to the National League, and that was definitely there yesterday. And
what about in the stadium? Was there any jostling going on between fans?
No.
Was there any needle? I know you've had your issues before being below in Castlebar and Mayo at league games where a bit of needle might set in. None of that?
No idea what sort of issues you'd be talking about on that front, but no, absolutely not. They were lovely people yesterday, Armagh, because they were on the losing side. I'm sure I'd be sitting here this morning saying that they're horrible fans had they been celebrating a win, because that would be a disgraceful thing to do as a fan, to be happy after watching your team winning a game. So no, they were good yesterday. Hospitable.
Come here. there was a lot of chatter yesterday, online especially, about David Clifford embracing superstardom. Now, maybe a lot of chatter means that I tweeted something like that he's somebody who, like, he celebrates his goals. And there's a couple of people putting out excerpts from David Byrne, who wrote Game of My Life, the Kerry book, put out excerpts up from it. Like, and I'll get the Kieran Donaghy quote here in a second. But what was the excitement like in the stadium when you heard that David Clifford is in the 26? Because, you know, Sean O'Shea's missing with a toe injury. It looked like the Kerry team that was released on Friday night were missing a couple of key players. Paddy Clifford was out. You know, Jack Savage and Tony Brosnan were starting once more. They played really well in Tralee against Mayo, the two of them. But when Clifford is named, number 10 on his back, but he's brought into the 26 at the last minute, is there an excitement? Is there a bit of, ooh, great,
Yeah,
it's going to be worth the trip?
Definitely interesting. The celebration thing is a good talking point. You mentioned the David Byrne extract there from his book. Does David Clifford need to get a better celebration though? I mean, the arms outstretched. Like when he did it first, I was like, right, is he actually going around to just make sure that he's making himself as big as possible for the resulting kick out, or is this actually the celebration?
Because kind of Cantona-esque.
Yeah, it kind of was. I hadn't really kind of seen it before. Like it was quite conspicuous yesterday. It was like, oh, that is an actual reaction to that goal, and he's kind of certainly dragging this out in terms of a celebration. So I wonder, is he going to do a Luke Ayling next week and try and replicate Robbie Keane or something like that?
Yeah, like, do you know what? He's going to be scoring goals, so he's going to have to think about it. Will I read out the Kieran Donaghy quote from that?
Yeah, go for it.
In my life. So Donaghy's talking about how, especially down in Limerick, down in 2014 in the semi-final, that the crowd made such a massive difference in that game, that you could just feel it. Even when the game was swinging away from them, the crowd would pull you back into it, and how he always played off the crowd. And you could see that when Kieran Donaghy played football. He said he would have struggled to play during the pandemic, given the fact that there was no crowds out there. But he said that he pulled David Clifford aside when he first came into the scene and said, Dave, celebrate your goals, because you're going to be an icon for the next number of years. If you get that big goal and you celebrate with the crowd, they will give you more energy and give everyone a lift. And like that is absolutely a factor, because when Clifford scores, there's a collective roar from the Kerry people, because they know there's an anticipation when he receives the ball in his hands that he's going to do something special. And there's a bit like, you know, with most other players, there's an element of chance that he may miss. And even if Clifford does miss, everyone knows it's a freak and he's going to end up scoring 1-4, 1-5, 8 points anyways.
Yeah.
It just has to give that extra bit of buzz when you've got a marquee player like that.
And obviously the kind of key point there being that he was up against Kieran Donaghy coach team yesterday. Donaghy, by the way, very involved in the warm-up, I must say, like took the warm-up himself, a lot of simple hand passing drills, and the game was delayed by 10 minutes. I'm not quite sure why that was, because we were there. It was like everybody's in the stadium, nobody's coming in. I'm not sure that, like, are we sure that wasn't to do with the GPA standoff? That there was a situation of pushing the game back? Wasn't there some suggestion last week that there could have been an attempt to disrupt some broadcast? That wasn't the suggestion. The suggestion was that there was people coming in late, but certainly everybody was in come 2 o'clock yesterday, and they still waited till 2:10. So it was an extra long warm up basically for Armagh. And Donaghy was right down in front of us doing it. But no,
when did the mafia get word that Clifford was in?
Well, like we were speaking to his dad beforehand, and you kind of got to. He said he didn't know. He said he didn't know what the crack was, but there was definitely a sense that there was a chance that he had travelled all right, which was a bit different. But no, I mean, like I think that's interesting what you're saying there about the celebration. Like, because he was in Ulster as well yesterday, I would say Ulster are the kings of the goal celebration. Whether it's Joe Brolly blowing kisses to the crowd, or still my favourite celebration in GAA is when Ronan O'Neill dabbed after scoring a goal in Croke Park that one time, which I think is the next level. I think David Clifford needs to dab next time he scores a goal, and then all of a sudden we're away with this thing. And I think we should embrace this. I think, you know, let no quick kickouts. Let the referee encourage players to go celebrate, and then get the kickouts underway, and let's create a brave new world.
Just on celebrations, because if David Clifford does dab, everyone is going to be dabbing after that. But the other thing is, you are seeing a lot of celebrations, especially in home games. And this is the beauty of the league. And we're going to get into it in a few minutes. Celebrations into the terrace. Tony Brosnan did it when he got his goal in Tralee. Celebrated into the Kerry fans behind the goal. Did you see the Dublin steward at the weekend at the Hill?
Yeah. Loving life.
Anthony, loving life. Bloody celebrating, going nuts anytime Dublin got a score into the Hill. Anthony Moyles has a bone to pick with him a little later on.
Yeah, well, Anthony Moyles is going to be with us in the 8 to 9 hour this morning. You're with us here on OTB AM, which is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Let's tell you what's coming up over the course of the next couple of hours. The performance rankings are on standby. Alan Quinlan will be with us at 8:10 to reflect on a crazy weekend in the Six Nations. Ireland are Grand Slam champions at under 20 level. They won the Triple Crown at senior level, and Wales beaten by Italy as England asked questions about their head coach. So plenty to ponder with Alan Quinlan at 8:10. Brian Kerr at 8:25 reacting to the weekend's football. Sports news coming your way at 8:25 with Cahill. Anthony Moyles, as Tommy's already plugged there, is coming your way at 8:50. Mark Lawrenson looking back on the FA Cup in the Premier League at 9:10, and then more Six Nations reaction coming your way at 9:30 this morning. Now, get ready to cheer Ireland on in the TikTok Women's Six Nations. To launch this year's campaign, we are giving away 2 tickets to see Ireland take on Wales on Saturday, the 26th of March at 4:45 in the RDS Arena. The lucky winners will also be entered into a draw to be in with a chance to win an overnight stay in the stunning Intercontinental Hotel on the night of the game. To enter this competition, tell us what do you think the score will be this weekend between Ireland and Wales, or wherever you're watching this morning's OTB AM. Just comment on Twitter or on Facebook or on YouTube. International Women's Rugby is at the RTS, and there is nothing like it. Be part of the action. Get your tickets at ticketmaster.ie. Performance rankings.
You know, that wasn't an All-Ireland winning performance.
Probably should have won the game based on their second half performance.
Is it a step too far to say it was the performance so far of the World Cup? Maybe not.
OTB AM's Performance Rankings with Gillette.
I'm scratching my head. That performances was just lacked that intensity.
Well, as we do here every morning, every Monday morning on OTB AM, we go through the good, the bad and the grand of the weekend's sport. As you can see on screen, we've got a couple of interesting talking points here, Tommy. In the red, in the bad, a couple of terrible performances over the course of the weekend. And in there at number 5 is a story that we've been covering for quite some time here on the show. We have been watching the highs and the lows of the Welsh rugby team. We brought you news last year of Welsh fans projectile vomiting all over the Principality Stadium. And that wasn't even after a terrible loss. And I wonder where the projectile vomiting fans are this morning after watching their team getting beaten by Italy. Italy, the team we wanted kicked out of the Six Nations. We wanted to make this a 5 nations. We wanted promotion, relegation. We wanted Georgia in instead of Italy. That Italy have beaten your Wales in a fairly humbling moment for your team. We should say that this is actually the story of Italy, to be quite honest with you. This is the story of an amazing last gasp try, a brilliant emotional moment for the rugby people of Italy. Phenomenal commentary from the Italian commentator, which we might bring you in a little while, and just a great moment. But it is also kind of the story of Wales.
It is absolutely the story of Wales, especially here this morning on OTB AM Own. Anyone who knows our, I suppose, jousts and battle with Wales Online over the weekend will have been tuning in. I'm sure we've got a lot of fans here this morning hate watching already, but to do so without mentioning Italy, it was difficult not to put Italy up on screen this morning because, my God, the scenes at the final whistle. The scenes once that conversion went over, because I think, not that there was any chance that the conversion wouldn't have been nailed, but you couldn't let the emotion out. It was nearly like a VAR goal being scored. The fact that they were still a point down. I'm seeing there that, do you know what? I don't have the Italy audio ready. I should have had the Italy audio ready this morning. It was absolutely sensational, the commentary of that try. Padovani touched it down right under the posts. But it was a Capuzzo who broke, the fullback, who broke through the line, that insane break. It was unbelievable. And it makes it, I don't know, especially in the year that's in the last couple of years. Especially in the last couple of years, Italy and their place in the Six Nations being a question so much. I don't know. I don't know whether you think there should be a chance that they're out of it, but it was amazing to see those scenes at the weekend.
Yeah, I was at the Ireland match on Saturday, but even around Ballsbridge beforehand, I was just kind of meeting somebody, and it was just this massive roar, 2 massive roars from the pub across the road, and you just had to kind of run over and actually get the fact that find out what was actually happening. And it was just this joyous moment that every rugby fan wanted to see over the last little while. Like you mentioned there, that it is kind of like a VAR-like moment. Kieran Crowley, relatively stoic when they actually scored a try, and then the conversion obviously is the key moment. And I think we can actually bring you the commentary of that great moment of Italy's winning try.
Domani Capuzzo. prova ad andarsene Capozzo, 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 Padovani, la meta dell'Italia, la meta dell'Italia, 21-20, bisogna realizzarla tra i pali, bisogna realizzarla. Che azione di Capozzo, che alla fine dentro i 22 è riuscito a servire Edoardo Padovani. Che meta degli azzurri, Edoardo Padovani, il mio idolo, 21-20.
Yeah, Italy in the green really this morning, and it's Wales who have a dire Six Nations, I think it's fair to say, at the end of it all. And I mean, after last year where they looked like they were going to be the team who didn't really impress on paper and actually get the job done, it seems to have been quite a turnaround this year from Wales. But I guess, as form has sometimes shown us in the past, Wales come good on a World Cup year, and Ireland, for example, tend to fall flat. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see their graph over the next little while. We are going to come back to the rugby in just a moment elsewhere in the performance rankings, but we just want to move on to Everton, who are also in the red after their FA Cup hammering at the hands of Crystal Palace yesterday. Like, this was like possibly the definition of a sporting collapse, where they looked okay for a good section of the game, for a quarter of the game, and then once they conceded that 25th minute opener to Crystal Palace, the whole thing just fell apart. They ended up losing 4-0 to Crystal Palace, and this has been a fascinating story to watch as well over the last little while. Yes, they've had that Alexander Iwobi late winner the other night, and that may well be a crucial result for them in the grand scheme of things. The FA Cup is not going to be the thing that keeps Frank Lampard and Everton happy, or give them non-sleepless nights. They're currently in 25th on 25 points. 3 points clear of the relegation zone, ahead of Watford. When they're back in Premier League action, that'll become more into view. But Frank Lampard, not a happy camper after yesterday's 4-0 hammering. Here's what he had to say.
So much you can keep trying to butter someone up to give them confidence. There's a balance of confidence stroke. We're playing at the cutthroat end of football here. This is a quarter-final today to get to Wembley. And if you haven't got the confidence to play, then you can quickly flip it and say, have you got the to play? Sorry, excuse me, but I can't. You know, that's the football reality. And if you fall somewhere in the middle, then don't worry about it, because we didn't play that badly today, and Palace didn't play that well today, and we lost 4-0 because of a lack of confidence and a lack of what I just said. Yeah,
Frank Lampard questioned the balls of his team after that yesterday, Tommy. He's also put a bit of pressure, not a bit of pressure, but he certainly looked back on some of the decisions that have been made at the club before he got there. Like, I mean, he says it's a challenge because it's been there for quite a long time before I got here, and like, he doesn't have a magic wand to get inside people's heads and change the resilience across a whole squad. Like, is that the sort of thing that you feel will spur Everton on over the next little while, or do you think that it's a situation where they need the arm around the shoulder and be like, it's okay, losing 4-0 to Crystal Palace actually isn't that bad a result?
Yeah, it's very difficult to know, because that 99th minute winner late Thursday night, Alex Iwobi's winner, was like, that looked like the moment that might spark their season into place. Like, that was such a huge result against Newcastle. You saw the celebrations afterwards. There's a great video actually of Richarlison sprinting from the bench to join the celebrations, all the players together. A moment like that felt like the type of thing that might bring a season and kickstart a season, kickstart a new managerial reign. Has this been the worst manager's bounce that any manager has ever had going into a new club? Like, Lampard just really hasn't got a tune out of them at all. Looking on yesterday, I was kind of half thinking, because they've been dragged into the relegation battle, not that they threw the FA Cup quarter-final or that they didn't turn up and try it, but did it really matter to Everton that they weren't? They didn't make it through. They need to stay up in the Premier League this year.
The results does not matter, I guess, when they're looking at what's going to be important to them at the end of the season. But it is just another moment that exposes where they are as a team at the moment. And if you've got your manager coming out lambasting you after that, then it's not a fantastic moment to be in. Like, I mean, their next couple of fixtures are obviously huge. They play West Ham after the international break, and then it's Burnley, which is obviously a massive game. West Ham at the weekend just look so tired and exhausted, and you want to be playing West Ham after your Europa League game, for example, after one of the Lyon games, as opposed to after an international break. So that's actually a very, very tricky fixture for them. They have to play Manchester United, they have to play Liverpool, they have to play Chelsea, they have to play Arsenal, they have to go to Leicester City before the end of the season. those are
they
the
were
things.
due to play Watford this weekend,
Yeah.
obviously, in a 6-pointer. Like, does the signing of Iwobi just sum up the misspent money at Everton and the mismanagement over the last couple of years? When you look at Arsenal's setup at the minute, how they cleared out so much deadwood and they are operating with such a young team at the minute and playing so well, playing football in the way that Arteta wants to play. And then you realise that Everton spent the guts of 40 million euros on Alex Iwobi a couple of years ago. As an Arsenal fan, were you worried when Iwobi was leaving? Were you happy when they got that much from him?
Not at all. I think that you weren't worried whatsoever. I think that he kind of reached a point, and it was almost predictable that he was going to go to Everton. There was that feeling. So he moved in 2019, 3 years ago. He's 22, so there was obviously the potential for him to go and explode at a different club. And look, I mean, maybe Everton fans will say the last gasp winner the other night is something that will kickstart him, but I mean, it's at the age of 25 now, you're kind of looking for a number of different kickstarts to his career. So no, it's been a bit of a flop, and it's probably a little bit of hindsight being 2020, but there was certainly an element that you could probably see coming over the last little while that Iwobi wasn't going to make it or wasn't going to repay that transfer fee. Those are in the red this morning, Wales and Everton. We are putting Gaelic football this morning into the amber. Tommy, why is that?
We're putting Gaelic football in the amber because I think it's very clear that we're playing our best competition at the worst time of the year. We are now coming into the final round of the leagues. I make it probably out of 32 counties, you've got about 24, 25 with something to play for. All 8 teams in Division 3 have something to play for, whether it be relegation or promotion at the weekend. 4 teams in Division 4 can get promoted this weekend. Meath and Clare are the only 2 teams in Division 2 that don't really have anything to play for now. And saying that, even Clare need to get a result of some sort up and down. Down are already out. Kerry are through to the league final, and they're likely to play either Mayo or Armagh, so maybe Kerry are the only team that don't have something to play for in the final day. Kildare, Donegal, Tyrone, Dublin, Monaghan are all in relegation battles this weekend. Next weekend in the National Football League is going to be insanely competitive. It's going to be crazy. The one issue that we've got this weekend is that Tipperary and London are playing on Saturday night. If that game doesn't get moved to Sunday, which is the same at 2 o'clock on Sunday, the same time as all the other Division 4 games, it means that Leitrim and Sligo on the Sunday will end up being a dead rubber if Tipperary beat London on Saturday night. That's the one issue we have with the league this weekend. It is a bloody brilliant competition. But Owen, it's been so difficult to get a read on form for the first 4 weeks of the season. They've been played in such terrible weather, horrendous winds, rain. I was obviously the definition of a fair weather fan, complaining about the rain down in Tralee last weekend. You're well used to being there in all sorts of conditions. Like, if we could just flip it and put this competition to the summer, I think we would have the finest product of sport in the land. Like, it is so competitive. Even Clare and Meath yesterday, poor game of football. Both teams cancelled each other out, but it went down to the wire and it was dramatic, and that's all people care about. Whereas we're going to walk into a competition in 3 weeks' time, and yes, there's going to be headline games like Mayo Galway, but there's going to be so many mismatches in the provincial championships already. And then when it gets to the Tailteann Cup, we're going to have the issues that we're seeing, which is that these games just aren't going to get the coverage. Unless there's a new media deal ripped up, unless there's games streamed live on YouTube or GABO, we're just not going to see enough of the games. But yeah, that's kind of how I feel this weekend. It's a bit of a poison chalice. The league is going to be over next week, and it might be our most competitive Sunday of the entire year.
Yeah, and like, it has, even within all these conditions, been really good. Those conditions being bad weather, the fact that the incentive actually isn't overly there to win it for the top teams. Like, as I said earlier on, I think that the atmosphere would actually be better at a ground where you've got 2 relegation-threatened teams in Division 1 going up against one another, as opposed to 2 teams chasing the league title, because the league title, like, isn't all that important. Staying in Division 1 is more important than that. Getting those games consistently year after year is what teams want to get out of the league. That actually, if you add in the fact that that could have been a race towards an All-Ireland title in better weather as well, in the middle of summer, in bigger stadiums quite often when it comes to some of these counties, you'd have an even better version of what is already the best version of Gaelic football that we're getting. So I think what this does over the next little while is that it shows up maybe the decision that they came to last year not to implement the moving of the league to the summertime. And I think it'll continue to show up the provincial championships in particular over the next little while, because what you've got is these brilliant games over the next little while, and then obviously there's going to be a couple of hammerings dished out in the provincial championships, and it's inevitable and it's obvious, and that is the true definition, I would say, of a dead rubber. The idea that you know exactly what the result is going to be before the game takes place, and that unfortunately is going to be the case for a lot of those fixtures that take place in the provincial championships.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. Just to give a mention to a couple of games this coming weekend, Monaghan Dublin. That's a relegation playoff in Monaghan. That is going to be a belter. Tyrone have to win in Kerry. Kildare need to beat Mayo away from home. Shout out to Kildare, by the way, 24 points to put up against Monaghan at the weekend. And then in Division 2, Cork and Offaly, the losers go down. In Division 3, there's a lot of drama. I don't know if you saw it, but Fermanagh and Westmeath drew at the weekend, 1-9 to 12 points. But late in the second half, Sean Quigley got a ball. And I'm telling you, this ball went over the black spot. I'm not sure if you saw it, but the umpires flagged it wide. So Fermanagh now are in a bit of bother. They should have had an extra point there. They should have actually probably beaten Westmeath. I know other things might happen in the last 10 minutes. But in Division 3, Antrim and Louth are at the top. Westmeath, Limerick and Fermanagh can also still make it into the promotion playoff for Division 2 next year, which is massive. Longford, Laois and Wicklow are kind of all playing off to get out there. Cavan are in control in Division 4. As I said, Leitrim and Sligo, that's a bit of a provincial playoff for that final promotion slot. But if Tipperary get the job done against London, they're going to go up with Cavan. So a lot to play for this weekend in the National Football Leagues. Yeah,
for sure. What's the best version of events do you think that could happen in Division 1 over the course of this weekend? This is the last weekend of it. What way do you see it going?
Yeah, that's a difficult one to predict. It's hard. I think Jack O'Connor is still going to pick a relatively strong Kerry team against Tyrone. I think he might rest a couple of players, but also you got to remember those Kerry players are playing for their position. So I'm not sure Kerry are going to make anything easy for Tyrone this weekend as they travel down. They're in need of a win. Monaghan Dublin is going to be really, really interesting because we've started to see Dublin coming back into form. They really looked at home yesterday, a sunny afternoon in Croke Park. Niall Scully scored a brilliant goal. He went for goal himself, tried to chip the keeper from 40, 50 yards. Brian Howard was swinging over beauties with the outside of the boot. Brian Fenton was back in his groove. James McCarthy was starting. Dublin looked really good yesterday. They were motoring really well. They really looked like the Dublin team that we've seen over the last couple of years. And then Monaghan, they've been one of the stories of the last decade, their ability to stay in Division 1 for so long with, such small resources at their disposal. That was such a flat performance against Kildare. Kildare were well in control for the majority of that game. Conceding 24 points is massive. Monaghan could well be going down this weekend, but again, at home to Dublin, you never know what they might turn around. And then Mayo Kildare is probably the game to watch. Mayo are trying to make it into a league final. When you say that some teams don't care that much about winning the National Football League, I agree. I think there's an element of, over the last couple of years, you can see with Mayo, at certain stages in their development, some teams don't need to win the league. They just need to get, battles into the system or get their players playing games where they might be up against their backs against the wall. I feel like Mayo could really do it winning the league this year. They've got the back-to-back All-Ireland finals, which they've lost. They won a league a couple of years ago, was it back in 2019, they beat Kerry. I think for the development of this team, quite a young team, they need to experience winning in Croke Park again. And I think it will be a big one for them to get to a league final and win that. So I think Kildare might be up against it. I think Monaghan are going to be up against it. And again, I think Tyrone are going to be up against it. So I'm not sure if I'm giving Donegal much up against Armagh. I think they're going to be playing to win too. So
the Dubs are staying up. You're saying the Dubs are staying up?
I think the Dubs are going to stay up this weekend. But I think Monaghan, if any team could be difficult to play away in the last game of the season, I think it could be up in Monaghan.
Are the Dubs actually back? We've had 2 weeks of them winning now at this point. And it does seem that the signs are getting a lot more positive. The opposition the last couple of weeks, maybe not as good as some of the teams they played in the first 3 weeks in particular of the National League, but there is also the sense that Dublin are just able to grind these things out again. That there is definitely an air of early season Dubs of 3 or 4 years ago off this team again, where they weren't amazing in those years in the National League, but there was still enough of a gulf between them and the rest for them to win games by 4 or 5 points regularly.
Yeah, I don't think we've overreacted at all with Dublin Own. I think we were all analysing what was in front of us, and it was that this Dublin team were so alien to the Dubs that we had witnessed, that insane team we saw from even 2015 to 2021, if you want to take the 6 years. Are they back? I never felt they fully went away. Even against Kildare, They're beaten. It was amazing to see it. They were fallible. They were making mistakes. But they had 3 unbelievable goal chances, like 3 glaring goal chances, each of them from about 3 yards out that they failed to score. They definitely are playing with a bit more swagger. They're in a bit of a groove. Conor Callaghan's going to come back soon. There was a question hanging over them, and James Dunn, who made it on the Football Pod a couple of weeks ago, that it's next to impossible to get up to championship speed if you haven't played 3 or 4 games in the league. That is very, very difficult. He would have battled back from injuries himself. Now, I would argue that Dublin are going to make it through Leinster without much bother once again. Are they set to face Kildare in the Leinster semi-final? If they get by that, I think Dublin are going to be cooking well enough for a championship semi-final. But for the first time in a long time, if the Dubs have any injuries, like other teams, if the Dubs are missing a Conor Callaghan or a Kieran Kilkenny in the summer, well, that's when the trouble is going to be.
Yeah, for sure. Let's move on to the green this morning on the performance rankings. By the way, I should say that OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Every week we are giving away Gillette Labs shaving kit. So to be in with a chance of winning, just let us know who you think should make the performance rankings. The best place to enter is the Off the Ball Instagram page. You'll see the comments box in our story. Plenty of good shouts there this morning. You've got Xavi's Barcelona and Aubameyang in with a shout there on El Clasico, a big win for them last night against Real Madrid. But to bring us on to the green this morning, the football we're going with is Tottenham Hotspur as the race for the top 4 heats up. They beat West Ham United 3-1 yesterday, courtesy of my own goal and 2 goals from Heung-min Son as well. This Antonio Conte pattern continues. Every loss that they have is followed by a win, and every win that they have is followed by a loss. It does feel, though, that they're ready to start stringing a few results together. They've got Newcastle, Villa, Brighton, Brentford next up. Arsenal very much looking over their shoulder. A vital win for them on Saturday against Aston Villa, and Manchester United still very much in the mix. That result yesterday probably puts West Ham out of the picture for the top 4 at this spot. We've got a proper 3-horse race. Arsenal with a 3-point cushion and a 1-game cushion on Tottenham, but they have to play each other. That is one of those situations where it's going to be high stakes, do not bottle it sort of situation when Arsenal do play Tottenham whenever that game gets refixed for. It's going to be hard until we actually see that happen to know whether or not Arsenal have the bottle. But it definitely feels that the way that they've ground out a few results, it looks positive. But we're putting Spurs in the green, Tommy, because Conte feels is ready, as I say, to go on a bit of a run with this team, and that he's finally got this team clicking.
I was surprised to see Spurs in the green this morning, Owen. I thought you might have put Arsenal in there. It was a massive win they got against Villa. They may not have been playing as well as they have been in recent weeks. Spurs are on a roll with Conte. I was surprised to see, and we're going to hear from Brian Kerr a little later, Brian doesn't reckon that Spurs are going to have enough to make the top 4. So whether that's the fact that he thinks they'll fall short against Arsenal in that 6-pointer, I think it's fair to say that this race for the top 4 is going to give the National Football League a run for its money over the next couple of weeks. United and Arsenal are set to face in the middle of April too, aren't they?
Yeah.
Or is that 2nd of April? So that's going to be a huge match as well. It feels like Arsenal are in control, though. It feels like Arsenal with that game in hand. It's all within their own destiny. They can control it themselves. They're playing so well. I think Arsenal are in prime position here to take that 4 Champions League spot.
I was quite concerned about what would happen if they received a bit of a setback, and you looked at that Liverpool fixture and you were like, there's going to be a setback coming right at you down the track. Liverpool will almost certainly win that game because their recent record against Arsenal is so good. And I was definitely a bit concerned that once Liverpool won that game, that it was going to be a situation where they draw against Aston Villa or struggle to get across the line, and in actual fact they ground a result at 1-0, which definitely suggests to me a mental strength, which you're still loath to say. You're still never sure if you can actually say that sort of stuff out loud in case you look like an idiot in a couple of weeks' time. But it definitely feels that they've managed to brush that result off, and like their fixture list in the very short term isn't that bad. But you're right, it's those fixtures in April which are going to be absolutely vital, and they're going to determine whether or not it's going to be Champions League football for them next season. But Tottenham, I think, have got huge momentum behind them at the moment, and I don't think anybody else in the Arsenal or Manchester United camps have anything like the relationship that Son and Kane have at the moment. And I think Kulusevski's been an absolutely outstanding signing.
He's been class.
I think they're looking brilliant going forward. So I really do think that there's going to be another twist, or there's possibly going to be another twist in that tail for the top 4 before the end of the season. Before we finish up in the performance rankings, in number 1 place is France. They get the job done. They get the Grand Slam been a long time since we've seen France in the winners' enclosure in the Six Nations, but I think a lot of us would have predicted this coming at the start of the year. The one question was whether or not they would have had the mental strength to get over the line and see it out. And there was definitely a few hiccups throughout this year's Six Nations, Tommy, where you thought, right, could France actually bottle this? Like maybe even in the game against Wales the previous week, you thought, right, this thing could collapse on them. What I do think, though, is that I think France are better than even this suggests. Yes, they have a Grand Slam in their hands, but they don't even have the best scoring difference. Ireland have the best scoring difference coming out of this Six Nations. I think that they've actually dealt with a lot of the anxiety and got over the line, and they've got their hands on the Grand Slam. And I think that is a huge, huge mountain for them to climb as this young team tries to conquer next year. They're not keeping any secrets. They're not making any bones about the fact that they know that they're a World Cup contender at home at the end of next year. And once they got that first Grand Slam off the back, I think that they could do another one next year. I think they could do back-to-back championships at least. And I think this team is going to be around, obviously, for a very, very long time. So France, obviously, in the green and the Grand Slam for them. A brilliant team to watch as well, Tommy.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Owen. I think it was the psychological factor of it was massive for France this time around. It's fair to say that while the score difference was what it was, Ireland were quite a bit ahead. And, you know, England and Wales are 11 points off Ireland in second. Like, they've finished on 10 points, two of them. It is fair to say that France were the best team. Even though it was only a point in the difference, France were definitely the best team this time around. The hype is real. I think it's interesting that they had those couple of hiccups and they came through them. Winners, good winners, always find a way to win. I think Ireland's Grand Slam a couple of years ago, the year of Le Drop with Sexton, we found a way to win those games that year. We may not have been playing, you know, at 110% of what we could do. It was a pity that was the pinnacle of that team and the peak that we hit. I don't think that this is going to be the peak of France that we've seen so far. I think France are primed. It'll be interesting to see what happens next year in the Six Nations. Like, do you taper off a little bit next year in the Six Nations in anticipation of the World Cup, or are you trying to win back-to-back Grand Slams? It's hard to know. But there was a couple of moments. Was like genuinely, I had a couple of points. Paddy's Day was trying to keep half an eye on the game, or not Paddy's Day on Saturday. I was trying to keep half an eye on the game. Was there ever a chance that England were going to get over the line to beat them? They had a chance for half time for a try that kind of fell short. Was there ever a real danger that France were going to lose on Saturday night?
I think there's probably a more real danger that the France were going to lose than Ireland were going to lose in their game against Scotland, to be honest. And I think England probably got their things together in the second half when they were really up against it, but it was just too late. And I didn't think before the game that depending on England for a favour was an overly likely outcome. And we will get into England a little bit later on with Alan Quinlan as well, because a whole heap of questions about where they're at the moment. Like, based on absolutely nothing and based on just pure kind of history and trends, I do think that maybe next year England will just show up and all of a sudden they're a big contender again, especially with Eddie Jones at the helm. But whether or not Eddie Jones is even going to be head coach at the start of next year's Six Nations, I think if you're reading the papers this morning, that very much remains to be seen, because a lot of people don't necessarily want him in charge at the moment. One last thing to finish up this morning on with the performance rankings. It is, I would say, one of the stories of the weekend. The Formula One was back to Bahrain Grand Prix, so the return of Ferrari, a real return for Ferrari. A lot of people predicted beforehand that this was going to be a big season for them. Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz with a 1-2 finish in the opening race of the season. So that is a massive storyline. But it's not the big storyline. The big storyline, as ever with modern Formula One, is whether or not Gunther Steiner is happy. Like, I mean, he has entertained all of us in Drive to Survive being a grumpy man, because he is very, very funny when he is a grumpy man. He is the most likeable person in possibly any sport ever, and we just all want to see Gunther Steiner do well. So I think people will forgive me for saying that I think this was a good news story over the weekend, that they got points on the board. They got Mick Schumacher in at 11th, but in at 5th place they got Kevin Magnussen, making a return to Formula One with a top 5 finish. Absolutely incredible, but most importantly, this guy was happy.
Look at that smile. We've missed that smile, Gunther.
Yeah, I missed it as well. I think, no, it was what the whole team did. I mean, if you think about the last 2 years and then coming back like this, it's, I mean, you cannot write a story like this, in my opinion. But the guys, I mean, the guys on the racetrack the last 2 years. I mean, they had tough times, but they kept their head low, learned, and the pit stops today were good. Everything was just fine, and they took the last year to get ready for a better car, and the guys delivered a good car this year. So it's all down to the team. They can be all very proud. I mean, I'm proud of them, you know. So it's just fantastic. I mean, I can't say more, you know. But it's all down to the team, you know. Kevin did a fantastic job. I mean, for him, a comeback like this, he wouldn't have dreamt of, I think, you know. But things happen in life. A month ago, it was a complete different scenario, and now all of a sudden we are fifth.
OTB AM's Performance Rankings with Gillette.